When was the last time that you stayed somewhere that told a story and didn't just provide a bed?
I think that's a key thing for a host to keep in mind is that whenever a guest books a property, they're looking for a little bit of fantasy. It's an escape for them, even if they're traveling for work.
From thrifting treasures to modern designs, how do you create a short-term rental space that guests will never forget?
Something distinctive that not only is going to stand out on, the listings, but also just create a distinctive experience for guests that will make it memorable and make them want to come back.
What happens when an artist's eye meets the short-term rental market? Meet Christina Melander, a host redefining guest experiences.
I think guests coming into a place that has a lot of care and thought put into it are going to also respect that.
I'm 30-time Airbnb superhost Jason Muth. In 2016, we purchased our first short-term rental, and after 25 years working in the media business, we do this full-time right now. Since then, we've welcomed over 5,000 guests and their furry friends to our properties. Today, we're here to teach you how to create a smart stay. Now, here's Christina. So here on the Smart Stay Show, every so often we like to highlight hosts that are doing a fantastic job with their short-term rentals, with their side businesses. We have a great guest today, Christina Melander. Christina runs her own short-term rentals, one of them in our neck of the woods in New Hampshire, because I just learned that you're actually from New Hampshire. We're in Massachusetts, right over the border. So
Okay.
we have that. And you also run a design firm. We'd love to hear about the things you've learned along the way with your short-term rental property and the design work you've done. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Jason. Super excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Now, I kind of forgot you had this New Hampshire connection once we first started talking. And I was looking at your property, which is in Keene, New Hampshire. You said you grew up, just outside there, right?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Hopkinton, New Hampshire, near Concord, and my sisters live in Keene. And over the years, it sort of emerged as our family gathering place and
Mm-hmm.
just became a really special spot for us. And then a few years back, we kind of had the opportunity to invest in a really cool 1860 4-bedroom old house there, right near
Yeah.
downtown. And it's been
Very,
great.
very quintessential New England. Like people, which I'm sure you realize this when people are staying in our short-term rental properties, it's very aspirational. Oftentimes they're staying in a place that they don't have back home, right? They don't have the decor, the style. They want to change a pace when they're going to travel. And that's often why they're picking, properties like the ones that we have, the ones that you have, because you're able to offer something that's different from their, I don't know, their boring suburban home back home.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a key thing for a host to keep in mind is that whenever a guest books a property, they're looking for a little bit of fantasy. It's an escape for them, even if they're traveling for work. You get to step out of your day-to-day life and all of the mail that piles up and the dishes in the sink and many responsibilities and things you have to look at in your own house that you may not want to be reminded of, and you get to go away into this completely new environment. So I think it is really important to create a vibe and something distinctive that not only is going to stand out on, the listings, but
Mhm.
also just create a distinctive experience for guests that will make it memorable and make them want to come back.
So I want to dig into that in just a second, but I have to ask our first question that we ask all of our guests. What superpower sets you apart from your peers in this space?
I think it's authenticity. Um, I grew up like very influenced by my mother and my aunt, who are both incredible hosts and had a great eye for design and a bargain. So they love to create, these sort of magical spaces and vignettes, but doing it in a way that was very eclectic and honestly just budget conscious. But I think that is a forcing factor when you have, a budget or kind of a price point in mind and gives you this ability, this automatic filter, and you're going out and finding things. For me, that's through like estate sales and thrift stores and vintage markets where you can find these one of a kind, um, items and decorative objects and artwork that's just filled with so much character. So bringing that into a space, I think, gives it this little bit of a like a lived in quality that's real and appealing. And so when people arrive, they're like, oh, this feels like a home. It doesn't just feel like um, a somewhat sterile, um, more I don't know, benign environment that
Hmm.
that maybe we're used to of hotels from 10 years ago. I think a lot of boutique hotels, are getting in the game now to create some of that feeling in their, an atmosphere in their guest rooms as well. But yeah, I think authenticity, which we also try to carry over in our communications with guests.
Yeah. These are critical to people that are running short-term rentals, and we firmly believe that it's a good mixture of sturdy pieces that you can have that are comfortable, that will stand the test of time and the everyday wear and tear, along with some basics you can get off of Wayfair, Crate and Barrel, Pottery Barn, any of the great places online that you could purchase furniture or furnishings, and along with some unique pieces, for your property that make it special. And often having a local flair is good. If you, we have artwork in our properties that my mother did.
Mm,
We have in one of our properties the actual blueprints and design of the house that we had framed up, which I thought was neat. One
that's
of our
cool.
properties, we have my 2,500 CD collection in there in a great cabinet that I had commissioned using a lot of the artwork from those CDs back when those were a thing. But people still love them, and they're coming back. It's not just vinyl that's coming back. People love
I
having
love that.
this tangible thing that they can listen to, despite the fact that you can get all this stuff on Spotify right now. People thumb through it, and it creates some memories. So I couldn't agree more by having some pieces that are unique to the properties. And I also feel like putting these pieces in these properties, we're not putting in Van Gogh, right? It's not like a
Right.
piece that is extremely expensive that there's a risk that's going to get stolen. I always have a level of trust with the guests that we have that they're not going to break these things. I mean, if it's a family heirloom, that if it did break, I'm probably not going to put it in the property, but there's a line that I'm willing to put some things in there saying, hey, listen, you're a guest in our home. We want you to enjoy it. And here are some nice things that we found, and they mean stuff to us, and we want you to enjoy them too.
I totally agree. And I think it's really important for hosts to hear that because you just don't know when you're starting out, right? Because we've all stayed in Airbnbs of varying varying degrees of comfort and what they offer in terms of decor and those kind of more special objects. And we had this situation, my sister and I, when we started the first Airbnb in New Hampshire, because we used a lot of our aunt's furnishings and artwork. It was part of the reason we wanted to buy this house and create this, lovely retreat. But she had beautiful things and not so precious, but we were unsure. How are people going to treat these? Is the a couple of the sofas are white. Um, there's lots of nice artwork. There's, you know, nice china and sort of oriental urns and that kind of thing. And we just sort of rolled the dice and, like you said, respected that. I think guests coming into a place that has a lot of care and thought put into it are going to also respect that, right? And see, like, okay, this is someone who took the time to, create this really welcoming, comfortable environment. So I want to treat it well and treat it like my own.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we haven't had problems like that.
Yeah, accidents happen all the time, and that's but purposeful destruction is something that we haven't had. If anything has been stolen, maybe supplies, if that. I don't even know. I mean, like we leave enough out. I was just talking to one of the people that does some cleanings for us in Provincetown with our business, Pride Away Stays. And it's a new property. I'm working with a new cleaner because the cleaner cleaned for the owners, and the owners passed the property on to us to manage. And he said, "Well, how many rolls of toilet paper should we leave out, in each bathroom?" I'm like, "I don't know, a lot more than one, because that's what some of these big national companies do. And I don't want people to feel like we're skimping, on their stay. I want them to, be able to open the drawer and see enough supplies. I want them to be able to find cleaning supplies if, something happened and they feel like they need to clean it up. I want them
Yeah.
to feel like we trust them in our space. And by leaving things out, I think that's that level of trust. I've always had this mindset of, if you're going to steal all my paper towels, then you need it more than I do. And I'll just go buy some more. And that's more your character than my character. But I couldn't agree more. I mean, like the majority of what we have in our properties, it wouldn't be devastating if it was destroyed, but nothing's really been destroyed to that level beyond the level of wear and tear that we normally get. And we're willing to accept that risk, to create the environments that we do.
Yeah, I think it's the right trade-off to make. And like you said, there's always going to be a few guests who, you know, in Tucson took like we have public goods bath products, right, that are in the
Mhm.
refillable shampoo and conditioner and body wash. And they're pretty nice looking and sturdy. And we've had guests just take the full size things with them. But to your
Yeah.
point, maybe they need them more than I do. And so be it. But that's rare.
It is funny you say that though, because we were working with some owners in Provincetown that like Kiehl's, and I love Kiehl's products, right? I use them myself. Uh, and there's a Kiehl store in Provincetown. It's kind of rare to have like a national retailer like that, but it definitely caters to LGBTQ plus community. Um, One owner wanted to have full size bottles, and I'm like, you know what? You could do that. Just be aware that they might they might go missing. These are
They
like
might walk.
$60 of shampoo, which is
Yeah.
partly why we put products that are in the properties that we own and the ones that we co-host that are reasonable, but not the ultra luxury, right? Like we'll put, just standard bottles of pump shampoo and everything we can get from Costco, BJ's, Walmart, but not the lowest brand. But public goods, for example, I'm not surprised that some of those larger bottles might walk away. We do like the larger bottles in the bathrooms though. Like, I'm not, it's probably not for an, eco-friendly reason. It's more so a practicality reason, where if we're putting in larger bottles in the bathrooms, it's more likely that there's going to be some product there for somebody for a longer duration stay versus
Hmm.
like two little bottles that they give you in a hotel. But these are all things that we learned along the way from having done so many stays. I'm sure there's some things that you've changed your tune on, or things that you've learned by being a great host. I mean, the property that I checked out, oh, where's my window there? It's over there. I mean, you have a guest favorite with the gold badge on it for your property in New Hampshire, 4.98 rating. These are enough. These are difficult to achieve, for the average host. So what are some things that you think you might have thought about from the start, but you've decided to behave a little differently after having hosted for a couple of years?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think in New Hampshire for the Keene property, one of the things we've done from the start is welcome guests with a fresh baked bread of banana bread, a fresh baked loaf of banana bread that one of my sisters makes. She's an incredible cook and she enjoys doing that. And it's just a nice touch that I think certainly people appreciate and often mention in their reviews or in our guest book. So that was something we started with, and we were pretty sure we wanted to continue. We just didn't know how it would be received, or if, um, people would feel like, oh, I don't want something that's homemade. But that's worked out great.
Mhm.
We have replaced certain things like rugs. You kind of learn over time that it pays to invest in a high quality rug or something that like a ruggable that is going to be washable or really easy to spot clean and take care of. And I did that in Tucson as well, because when you're starting out, you're sort of like, you have so much to do, right? You've got to furnish an entire place, you've got to get all your supplies, and you're also spending a lot of money. And I think there were some areas where I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go kind of on the low end for these pieces. And now I see in Tucson, like a year and a half later, that, okay, that rug's not wearing well. The sides are kind of like curling up, and, it just doesn't look great. And I want it to look great, and I want it to, feel fresh for them. So that's one thing. I think also just communication is super important, and having that, again, having something that feels real, whether you're using something like Hospitable, a channel manager to automate some of your messages, you can still do so in a way that is personalized. And to me, I have two properties, so it's not like I'm managing 20 plus and having to handcraft all these messages. But I feel like the sweet spot for me is a combination of things that are automated and sort of, standardized, and then other messages that I just write, that are personal. um,
Hmm.
i think I think that really helps for the guests to feel like there's a real person on the other side who, not only cares about this property, but cares about my experience and how smooth things are going to be for me. And then they know if they have questions or any issues that they can contact you, and they're going to get a response. And that is another thing, is I'm super responsive. So,
Hmm.
if I get a notification, like I'm on it.
You're right on it. I feel like I've been doing this for 8 years now. Our first property was 2016, and we had two properties for a long time, like for many, many years, probably up until about 2021 or 2022 is when that third one went live. And I hear a lot of what we did, within the first couple of years with everything you're saying. We didn't have the knowledge to bring in a channel manager and automatic, dynamic pricing at that time. Like I didn't do that until 6 years into doing this. So when I went full time into short term rentals, one of my goals was to, run the company like a company instead of a side thing, and bring in software to help, with help with pricing, help with messaging, because I was doing everything that you just said. I was physically copying and pasting welcome messages, and then emailing that out to people with an attachment of a bullet point list of a PDF, right? This is what a lot of people start with. And that's what I
Hmm.
started with as well. And I like the personal touch I was able to give. I was able to do it at that scale once I started to increase the amount of properties that we were offering up, first from the ones that we owned, and then from the co-hosting business, I had to bring in some other forms of communication. And I'm really happy to say that a couple years into it, like I compare my ratings now to then, and nothing's changed, right? So like there is a
Hmm.
way that you could add technology into your everyday. You could make your life a little bit easier by doing it, and you could still provide that same level of service. Like one couple things that we do, I don't know if do you use automated messaging yet with Hospitable, because we're also on
I do.
Hospitable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For
I
for
think it's
some
a
of
game
them.
changer. It just, we set up messages at various checkpoints, like upon booking, shortly before your arrival with your door code, shortly after you arrive, upon checkout, and then asking for a review afterward. Like we have, kind of five specific touch
Right.
points, which sometimes we'll toggle them off. Like if we've heard from somebody before the 11 a.m. message the morning of your first day, you know, if we've heard from you already, I don't need to send that message saying, how was your stay? Because you've already kind of reached out to us. If you've already reviewed, then there's automations to turn the review request off. If the guest isn't having the best time from what you can kind of gather, I definitely turn that review request off. I don't want to poke the bear, but um, I've kind of jumped into conversations myself that was like, hey, that was my automated message and this is Jason, and here's a little bit more color into what you just received. And every so often I'll make a typo on purpose in there to make it seem like I'm just kind of like going really quickly with my thumbs. And I don't know if that makes any difference, but people seem to, appreciate the fact that we have, really professional communication along with like a human behind the scenes, which is, what software like Hospitable allows us to do. It allows us to kind of free up our time, have good consistent messaging with people, but can also jump into the conversations whenever you need to.
That's interesting. I like that you'll actually hop in and be like, that was my automated message. This is me. I wanted to add a little more context.
Yeah.
I think that people would appreciate that.
Not only do I do that, but we have a virtual assistant who works with us, like, throughout the week, 5 days a week, and he does that too. So sometimes he'll say, hey, that was my automated message. This is Jason. It's really Dan, but it's him acting on behalf of us. But like, I still see all these messages. I mean, we're small enough that like it still hits my phone, and oftentimes I'm the one that gets it before he gets it. And sometimes I'll be responding just out of the nature of responding, because you know how it is when your phone vibrates or you see that message pop on your screen, you're responding immediately. And sometimes I'll respond before he gets to it. He's like, oh, I was writing a response out. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I just happened to see it come in, so I figured I'd answer that question. um so, all right. So you're the founder of Knotty Pine Design, which is your design firm as well. And I was reading up on what you believe with the design firm. We talked about it a little bit on this podcast already, but unique pieces. So antique, local things that have meaning. Um, are those values, or are those strategies that you've kind of like put into the design work that you're offering to yourself and to clients?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was really inspired after setting up the two Airbnbs in very different parts of the country, right? And in doing that, it did really make me think about bringing in those local elements and how to make a place feel like it is of the location without it tripping into kitsch or overdoing, where in Arizona, right? Like you're going to see 1,000 cactus motifs in people's rentals, which we have some too. And the like saguaro cactus is an incredible like sight to behold out in
Your
the
hands up,
wild.
right?
And yes, yep, the big arms.
Yeah. Yep.
And they only grow natively in the Sonoran Desert in southern Arizona and northern
Mhm.
Mexico. So it is super special. The point is like you want to embrace the region without overdoing it. With Knotty Pine, I really try to bring a mix of old and new, which you mentioned earlier as well, right? Like you're still going to get new mattresses and bed frames, most likely bed frames, and those might come from Wayfair or Amazon. But then it's having a mix that is sort of eclectic and gives people something unexpected and interesting, to just sort of like put their eyes on and experience when they're in this getaway, for a weekend or a week or a month. So I I found that, in Tucson there is just an incredible thrift scene. Like I, I was blown away by just the amount of resale stores. Um, I had also had the experience of helping a friend set up an Airbnb in Tucson a year prior. And she had a really tight timeline. We were down there for a week. She did a masterful job of planning it out and ordering things ahead of time so they would arrive when we were there. And it was great. But I have to say, the amount of packaging and assembly that we had to deal with was kind of off the charts. And that got me thinking about sustainability and also practicality. So when you are buying things from an estate sale or a Facebook Marketplace or Nextdoor or a Goodwill, it's already assembled. It doesn't have a bunch of styrofoam and bubble wrap and cardboard and plastic. And that not only can save you money, but it saves you really valuable time. And let's face it, like keeps things out of the landfill, which there is just, I think, because of the way furniture is produced, and we have so many options when it comes to retail now. uh, there's more and more that's being that's available on the resale market. So you can get really, really high quality things that are very lightly used, or in some cases not used at all. Um, and yeah, and you're going to save some money, you're going to save some time, and then you're going to create this blend in your short-term rental that I would argue is, you know, uh, perhaps more unique than if you were to buy everything off the rack.
Yeah. It's tricky because, you do want to combine those two things both to save money and time. Um, we always do white glove service whenever possible, whenever we're ordering, because then I know that everything gets taken away that is related to the packaging. But it is just a volume of packaging. We just had a guest on before this episode. Justin Miller works for a company called Showplace, and they basically will set up all the design work for you and can arrange for contract work in whatever market around the country to do some assembly and white glove service and everything. But you bring something up that he also brought up, that, if you're listening to this, setting up your first property, second property, whatever, the amount of boxes that will be shipped to that property if you're ordering everything online is more than you could even imagine. And then the result of those boxes is cardboard, styrofoam, plastic, things that are holding all that stuff together, right? You need to do something with it. And, we, in all the properties that we've furnished, all the cardboard I'd be shuttling back and forth with my car from New Hampshire down here to Newburyport or Boston at the time, always going into some recycling thing. But like, I'd never have an empty car when I'm driving anywhere. You're like filling it up with like flattened cardboard. And the recycle center down the street from us takes styrofoam too. So like, I started bringing styrofoam over there as well. But it's just so much stuff. One recommendation he had, which I never even occurred to me, was to get a rollaway dumpster when you're doing a place, right? Or a bag
Mm.
store, or one of those things that could just easily be fill it all up and have it taken away. It doesn't solve the issue of where does it go afterward. I mean, like, we've washed our hands of it, but like, if it does end up in a landfill, then there are other sustainability issues there. So bringing up, the strategy of purchasing local and maybe some gently used furniture is a really good one that helps solve that. I think the people that do that really well are the ones that love doing it. Like, I could tell that you like thrifting, right? Like,
Yeah.
is it a hobby of yours, a passion? Like, you enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah. Well,
to
and
me,
that's, I
I'm like,
mean,
ugh, I don't have the time to do it. That's why I need to hire someone like you to go do it on my behalf, because like, I'm just like, I don't even know what stores to go to. I don't know how to transport the stuff afterward. I don't have the vision for how these things could fit in, but that's where designers like yourself come in.
yeah, I mean, thank you really for for mentioning that, just because that is the essence of Knotty Pine Design is yeah, it's like I am here for you. I recognize that not everyone has the inclination or the time or yeah, just the interest to do that. And so that's where I saw an opportunity to specialize in short-term rental arena for home design, to yeah, for people to be able to offload that. And I feel like designers such as myself who are, are specializing in resale and creative reuse of furnishings are um, offering a different type of interior design to clients. I think interior design, sort of historically has been a little bit more oriented toward the high end and can be sort of opaque and intimidating. And I wanted to do something that was really accessible and affordable, but to also help people further their investment. Like you're buying a place, right? To rent out to others. That's a huge undertaking and investment. And just like we were talking about with Hospitable or Price Labs, you want to utilize things that are then going to help you maximize that investment. And what I feel like a service like Knotty Pine can do is allow people to really stretch their budget that they're putting towards furnishings and setup while getting a really like high quality result, um, without having to spend, I don't know, like 50,000 dollars on furniture off the bat.
What what mistakes do you see people making who do a short-term rental for the first time? And like you've done a number of them at this point. It could be something. It could be furnishing your whole place off Facebook Marketplace. It could be cutting corners left and right. It could be spending way too much on things. Like what do you think? What are some tips that you have for people that are just starting out? If you can give the advice of like, don't do these two things.
Sure. I've got three actually, if I can.
Oh,
So
three.
the
Okay.
first one, yeah, the first one is don't treat your short-term rental as the place for your cast-off furniture that you're sick of from your own home. We see this a lot on the Oregon coast, which is kind of a captive market because people always want to stay on the Oregon coast. So there's a lot of rentals that are like they have so much potential, but they just have not updated or refreshed. And they literally are like, that basement furniture from the 70s and 80s. That's like that brown plaid acrylic knit,
Hmm.
that kind of thing. So don't use your cast offs unless you know, unless it's a few that are actually really nice. Number two, don't buy all your art from Home Goods or Costco or
Yep.
Target. It's just going to look very uniform and somewhat bland. And again, I get that not everyone has the like vision for this, but even if you say to yourself, I'm going to go to a couple different stores, or I'm going to go to like a local um, emporium that might have some cool posters of the city that the place is located in. Look to some, local artists, which are usually plentiful and have really cool stuff. Or get a couple things off of Etsy if you don't want to take the time to sift through, Goodwill or Vintage Store or Marketplace. Um, and number three, don't over rev and put in pieces you you're really concerned about. Like I have a friend who has a place at the beach and they use it too, right, for their family. They also rent it out and they got some really, beautiful um, sofas and tables, and they're always worried about people scratching the leather or leaving watermarks on the table, that sort of thing. And I think you want durable pieces that are going to serve for a long time, and that'll give you peace of mind so you don't feel stressed and then really upset or like offended if something goes awry when a guest is there.
I always say use the coasters. Right, coasters are a good thing to help with that.
Well, especially in the Northeast where it's so humid. I mean, you can't, like,
Yeah.
a glass is just instantly sweating. And so,
Hmm.
yes, put out a lot of coasters.
Excellent advice from you, Christina. One last question we have before we learn where people could hear more about you. What is one thing that you wish that you knew when you started?
I wish I knew that um, guests, you can't know what your guests are after, and I think you can only um, you can only do the best you can in delivering an experience that you think is going to be great. So I think use yourself as a test case. If you can, make sure you stay there or have someone else stay there in the beginning to do sort of a trial run. Even if you can give it to a friend for a weekend, be like, what did I forget? What do you wish was here? Is there anything, that could make it better? Or maybe ask that, if you can't do that, ask for that feedback from your first few guests, and hopefully you'll get some who will give you some really constructive insight. Because try as you might, you just can't be all things to all people. We still occasionally in Tucson will get a 4-star review, and they'll be like, this place was great, it was beautiful, had
Mm-hmm.
everything I wanted, and then you're like, well, why 4 stars?
Why
um,
four? Yeah.
yeah. And I think, you just, you can't always know. And so you have to sort of take that for what it is, see it, comment back if you want in a way that is diplomatic, and try to address the concern and, the replies so future guests will see it. But don't get too thrown off your game by it.
Yeah. That's excellent advice. Sometimes you get those 4 stars. You're like, where did this come from? These people had a great stay, and even said it. But yeah, I've been there, Totally get it. So thank you so much for appearing on the show. We really appreciate hearing your insights, giving some great takes on why to buy local and mix in some vintage flair with what you're doing. We love your properties. We'll put links in the show notes. We'll link over to Knotty Pine Design as well. Easiest way to get a hold of you would be doing what?
Through the website, through knottypine.design, you can click to my email there. And then, of course, you can follow me on Instagram at knottypine.design.
All right. And if you'd like to be a guest on this show, you can go over to smartstayshow.com and learn more about how you can appear. All of our episodes are up there. We love 5-star reviews and we read all of your comments. So please subscribe, tell people about this. Our objective is to teach, inform, educate, entertain people in the short-term rental space that maybe just need a hand to hold and need to hear from somebody else that they're doing a good job, and to hear what other people are doing, because this could be a very lonely place if you're doing it on your own. So, Christina, thank you so much for all of your insight today. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for watching the show, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks.